everyone and welcome to Two Player Quest. Today I'm going to be reviewing Daybreak. Daybreak is a co-op game about climate change and how to make the world and the people in it more resilient to life-threatening global crises. Let's get into it. Daybreak is a game for 1 to 4 players that plays between 1 and 2 hours. It's at a 2.9 on Board Game Geek, meaning it's a easy to medium kind of game. And I would say it's a medium kind of luck game. It depends on the crises cards, it depends on the local project cards, but also the global project cards. If the cards aren't in your favour, it will make the game a bit harder. This is what the board can look like at the start of a 2-player game. In this case, you can see on the screen China, which is this table here, and you can see the main board. A 2-player game, you would of course have a second player, but that wouldn't fit on my camera screen, so I'm just showing you one. A game starts in the global phase. In the global phase, which I have already done here, you add the 3 cards, or depending on what level you are on the thermometer, that many of crisis cards, which are these cards on the right hand side, and you grab 2 global project cards, and then as a team you decide which one to keep, and now you put it there. Next you have the local phase, in which you draw 5 cards from per player from the local project cards pile. These are the cards you now have in your hand. As you can see, these cards have tags and abilities. Now these abilities are sometimes once per round, sometimes they require certain tags, and you play with this to build your cards. I will now do a turn and I'll get back to you in a moment. This is what my playboard looks like now that I've done my first turn. After the local phase, you go into the emission phase. You check to make sure you have enough electricity for your demand. You can see that on here. You need 12 and you have 12. So that is on demand. Then you add all the carbon you make on your player board. So that's all the black tokens to the recent emissions on the big board. In this case, that is 20. Then you subtract for the amount, the fact that nature would subtract. So in this case, you can see that there's 7 oceans and 11 forests, meaning you subtract 18. So that would leave us in this case with 2. These 2 go onto the thermometer. If you were to fill up a thermometer line, as I would expect in the first go, you place this over it to say it has been filled. Then you do what it says on the right hand side, and because we've just filled up this one, we roll 1 dice, which landed on wood, so you move that ahead 1, which thus far has no effect. When you reach one of the scales, that is when it does do something. It will tell you on the board what it does. Then comes the crisis phase, in which you take the crisis cards and you read what it says and do what it says. So in this case, you gain 1 endangered people, or 1 community in crisis, per band on the temperature board, reduced by the ecological effects, because you are prepared. And you do that for each of the crisis cards that you have. So you do these 2 as well. Once you have done that, you go on to the growth phase. In the growth phase, you check to see if you have succeeded, if you are met the victory conditions, which I will get to in a moment. If not, you advance the round marker at the top, and then you grow your society. For China, you grow 2, and for other societies, you grow a different amount. Then you start the game, well, you start the round again. This game has a max of 6 rounds. It can be finished in less. You win this game if you have less carbon emissions than what the nature takes out. And then you need to have a nature source left afterwards. So in this case, if there are 18, you need to have a net emission of 17 or less. Then you will go into drawdown, and then you need to survive 1 extra round in drawdown. You lose this game if the thermometer gets up to the top and there is no more carbon to release, and unfortunately the world is not been saved. Or if it takes you more than 6 rounds to finish the game. Daybreak is a medium difficulty kind of game to learn. It's not the easiest, it's not like Monopoly, but it's certainly not hard. If you're used to board games, 10 minutes and you can get started on this game. It is not that hard, it's just not the easiest. If you're less experienced, I'd give it a little longer, but as long as one person knows what they're doing, give it 10 minutes and you can get started. I would suggest Daybreak to, first of all, people who like to learn more in a fun way about what is currently and what can be done against climate change. Yes, it is the theme of the game, but all the projects that are named here are all real projects. You can find all the information on the website of the people from Daybreak, but all the projects are actual things. So you can see what the world is already sort of trying to do against climate change. But if you want to get more into the mechanics of the game, I would suggest this game to people who like finding combinations, but also definitely like to see effects of those combinations. Because the cards and the tags and all the puzzling is, once you've done that properly, you can play a few cards and really see the effects of, on your player board, of what you've just decided to do. So that is something we very much like. But you mustn't be afraid to lose this game, because it's not a guaranteed win in this game, not as some other games that you can basically hardly ever lose unless you do something very terribly wrong. In this game, the friend of ours who we borrowed this from basically said when we played it for the first time, I've never actually won this game. And then we played it a couple of times and we basically haven't lost at all. We like Daybreak for the two of us. For us, it's a bit of a shorter game. It's about an hour. If you compare that to other games in our cupboard, that is definitely shorter. But even then, in that hour, you are playing a good and serious game. We like that every faction has its own starter cards, has its own difficulty, and the game comes with a lot of variety when it comes to difficulty. There's variety in depending on what starter factions you start with, how many trees, how many oceans, how many crises. A lot of things can be done differently. So that is something we very much enjoy. They also add separate sort of challenge cards to make the game more interesting. And this is something we very much enjoyed. So we like making the combinations, the plans, seeing what the game throws at us. So for us, this is a good game. Daybreak plays very well with more people. It is scaled exactly per person, so with 3 people it's the same scale as with 2. But there is one benefit to playing with more people, and that is that there are more people to help you out. There are cards that can help you with giving other cards to people or giving other things to people, and with more people there's more people to help each other. So that is one big benefit about playing with more people. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching our review of Daybreak. If you have any comments, feedback or suggestions, put them in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you next time on 2 Player Quest.